All right, we're back. Took a little break there. And now we are going to talk about different types of natural selection. So, all the examples we've given so far have been like the biggest beak or the frilliest pigeon, right? But natural selection doesn't always pick the most extreme trait. That's not always what's most advantageous. So, we're going to go through a few subtypes of natural selection. So, there's directional, stabilizing, and disruptive. So directional selection occurs, and this is the example we've been talking about, when individuals at one extreme end of a range of traits. So this is just like that, the beak size chart here, right? So we've got this distribution of, this time it's colors of beetles, right? So they go from pale blue to dark blue, right? So we've got this distribution of them. Individuals at one extreme end are the fittest, right? So in this case, we are selecting against, that's what these red lines are, against the light colored beetles, and the dark ones survive, right? Maybe they're not getting eaten by birds. So that is driving the population to have darker blue beetles because those are the only ones that survive to mate. So over time, we end up with, we've shifted our distribution, and now you can see if this is our chart, it's here, right? This is now our distribution of beetles over time. So this is directional selection. The next type of selection is stabilizing. In this case, actually, I want to go back one here. One moment, sorry. If we look at this directional selection, the mean, I want you to think about some details here. The mean of this trait has changed, right? Because it's, if before the average blue color was here, now the average blue color is shifted to the right. So our mean has changed. And then let's look at the variation, the overall amount of variation in that population, right? It had been from here to here, and now it's from here to here, right? So our variation has decreased. So natural selection, directional selection, is pushing the mean. Either it could be pushing it to the far left, right? They could get lighter, but in this case, they're getting pushed to the far right for darker beetles, and the amount of genetic variation has decreased because we're taking some of those individuals out of the population. The light colored beetles are not reproducing. We're losing those alleles. Okay, now we go on to the second type of natural selection, stabilizing selection. In this case, the middle is the fittest. So the individuals who are in that mid range are the fittest, and we're actively selecting against very light or very dark beetles. So maybe it's in some sort of landscape that is just this middle color, and those are the ones that survive. Or maybe they're just the most attractive beetles and they find the most mates, right? So over time, we get rid of the extremes, and we end up with a population more individuals in this middle, and we don't have these extremes on either side. So now, if we think about the mean here, has that changed? Look at those graphs. Has the mean changed? No change. Okay, and now let's look at our variation here. Has the variation in the population changed? Do we still have as many variants, as big of a range of variation? And that has also decreased, right? So we used to have a curve that went from far left to far right, and now we're right in the middle. A great example of stabilizing selection is actually human birth weight, especially before we had, you know, 21st century medicine. If we think about it, if any of you, go ask your parents how big, or if you are parents, like how big were you when you were born? Most human babies are, between about 5 to 8 pounds, maybe 6 to 8 pounds, right? Um, Especially, before we had preemie, good medicine for premature babies where we could tend to those babies and keep them alive. And before we had really safe C-sections, if a baby was too big, right? So a very small baby is going to have trouble thriving. A very large baby could kill its mom, just in the process of being born. And so there's very strong selection to have babies that are just right, the medium-sized babies. Not too small, not too big. That's stabilizing selection. And finally, the last type of selection that we're going to talk about is disruptive selection. So this occurs when individuals at either extreme are the fittest, and the middle phenotype is the least fit. So this is a hard one to think about, but in this case, um, and this example, this is calling it diversifying selection, but I usually call it disruptive selection. So you can ignore that. But obviously, different people call it different things. And if you call it diversifying, that's fine. And the reason is because we're kind of increasing our diversity here, right? Or at least we're maintaining our diversity in this population. The middle is getting kind of wiped out. Those are the least fit, but both extremes are fit. So if we think about this, did our mean change? If we look at and add it up and then divided by how many individuals there are, our mean did not change. The mean is still right in the middle. It's just that there's nobody there, right? So that's still our mean size. It's just that everybody's either to the right or the left of it. And the amount of variation in the population, it either increased or stayed the same, right? We still have this same range. And it's possible they get pushed far to the left and far to the right. And so maybe there's more variation. But our mean stayed the same. This is a hard one to think of examples for, but I do have one. There is a type of fish where the male fish will, they make nests, and the females will go from male to male and kind of check them out, decide which one she likes, and she'll lay eggs at the male's nest. And then the male, and it's external fertilization. So she'll lay eggs and then he'll put sperm right on top of them after she lays eggs. And the males care for the eggs. They kind of watch and protect them. In this type of fish, there are these big males that look different from the females, and they're much larger than the females, and they make the nest. There are other males that look like females. They're kind of like transgender male fish. They don't make nests, and they don't attract females. What they do is they swim around pretending they're looking at the male nests, and the males think that they are females. And when a female goes in and lays eggs, these transgender males swoop in and fertilize them. So they pass on their genes because they're successful, at least part of the time. So in this case, that you're selected for being either a very feminine male fish on one far extreme, or a very masculine male fish that the females actively choose. But a fish that's kind of in the middle is not going to get selected, right? He's not going to be picked out by the female. She's looking for the really big males, and he's going to be very obvious to the big male fish. He's going to get they're going to defend the nest against him. These little males only are successful because they're able to fool the others, right? So they can't be kind of in between. They have to go all the way in one direction or all the way in the other. So that is disruptive selection. And we're going to stop this lecture here and pick up next time with pieces of evidence for evolution.